This is basically part six of Why Nations Fail. So far, we have completed five parts of the book, and we are almost done with two-thirds of the book. So today we are going to start our discussion, but before that, let me share the screen. Okay. So we are starting from 24th slide of the MIT's original slides given by Acemoglu. How inclusive institutions basically reinforce themselves is the question in discussion. We are actually turning to the question of persistence, which is one of the most important and, in some ways, most sobering aspect of this book as well. So, the question is that once institutions are established, why do they tend to stay that way? Why is it so hard to change them? So the authors identify two kinds of persistence. One is a virtuous circle and the other one is the vicious circle. A virtuous circle is basically attributed for inclusive institutions, and a vicious circle is basically for the extractive institutions. So this basically slide focuses on the virtuous circle and how inclusive institutions in Britain kept becoming more inclusive over the time. Um, Modern world inequality is heavily, I would say, influenced by the nature of institutions from the last 250 years. I know this is a very striking claim, but it means that the choices made or the forces that have shaped the institutions during the Industrial Revolution era are still fundamentally structuring who is rich and who is poor today. So, why such persistence? Because they are powerful self enforcing mechanisms in both the inclusive and the extractive institutions. For inclusive institutions, the virtuous circle work like this. You can say that it works like inclusive political institutions will lead to inclusive economic institutions, which means having more property rights, free markets, and rule of law. Inclusive economic institutions basically would generate broad-based wealth. Broad-based wealth means that there is large, prosperous middle class with an interest in maintaining the institutions that are generated for their prosperity. So the middle class has the resources and the organization to participate in politics, to fund newspapers, to support independent courts, to vote for the government that basically threatens their property rights, and that political participation maintains and extends the inclusive political institutions. So, round and round, each element basically reinforces each other. Now, the British case, as shown in this slide, shows that the violent gatherings in Britain from 1828 till 1832. So this was basically the period which was leading up to the first Reform Act of 1832. So you can see a dramatic spike over here in 1831. See? So what was happening? The new industrial cities of Britain, such as Manchester, Birmingham, the Leeds, had no parliamentary representation whatsoever. So meanwhile, the Rotten boroughs, which was like the villages with handful of voters, would sometimes be controlled by a single landowner, and they had seats in parliament. So this was a fundamental mismatch between the actual distribution of wealth in population and the political institutions. So the industrial middle class, the factory owners, the merchants, the professionals of the new industrial cities, which were organized and mobilized for reform, um, were taking place. So this graph basically shows the level of contention um, not contention. Uh, at this point, we can say this is the point of demonstration. Royd's meetings in 1831, basically, when a reform bill was passed, the Commons uh, was rejected by the Lords. So there were riots across the England. So what did the political establishment do? They could have crushed the movement. They had the army, they had the courts, but instead, facing the alternative of revolution, they compromised. So the Reform Act of 1832 extended the franchise significantly. It redistributed the seats from rotten roads to industrial cities and brought a significant portion of the middle class into political nation. So this is a virtuous circle in action. Just give me a second.